This is Dating After Death, a podcast sorting out all the complicated emotions that come along with looking for love again after losing our forever person. And I am your currently anonymous host. Today I'm talking to Simon Blake, who is one of the few men who speak openly about what it's like to be a widow in the Instagram community. And Simon and I have been connecting for a little while, and he was an obvious choice for today's episode. I wanted to ask Simon about 17 other questions than I was able to get to with him in this interview, but I think the conversation is still really rich, and he's going to talk to us about finding someone new to do his life with after losing his beautiful Annie. So I hope you enjoy this conversation. So hi.
Hi.
I'm really just so glad to be sitting down with you because I feel like I've just been waiting to talk to you.
Yeah.
First of all, I just want to say I think you have been doing the most beautiful job just sort of through your Instagram page introducing us to Annie lately and just giving us more about who she was and your journey with her. And it's so nice to read.
I'm glad. Thank you. It's been good. It's one of the interesting things is Annie always wanted me to write. You know, we always talked. We had a very deep relationship around talking, communicating, sharing ideas with each other. And she, as an artist, did a lot of writing. She wrote for a ton of blogs, but always wished and tried to goad me into writing in some sort of forum and some sort of place. And, you know, never did for any number of a million reasons. It's been a way that I feel really connected to her in writing through this.
Yeah, you've really found your voice.
Yeah, I've noticed that when I am not writing, when I'm not sharing, that I actually like it feels physically stuck in my throat.
Totally.
And like I can tell, okay, I need to sit down and write. There's something that I need to share and something that I need to work through. And so I do. I sit down and just write. It often, most of my posts I write in about 15 minutes, but I'm like thinking about it for days and days and weeks. And then it just like shows up.
Totally. I feel like I have the same experience. I feel like lots of people are talking too about how like there's this compulsion to write. Yeah. And I have that same thing where I'm just like I never really plan it. It's just like it gets to sort of a breaking point where you're just like, I have to write this down now.
Yeah, exactly. It's such a weird experience. Annie would have loved reading and seeing me write my way through this and sharing my way through this. So
it's like a beautiful way to honor her.
Yeah.
So can you tell us your story about you and Annie and how you met and about your marriage?
So Annie lived all over the world, but kind of ended up her last couple of years of high school in Kansas City. Had a good friend there. She went to high school in London, Rio de Janeiro, and Kansas City. So,
oh my gosh, I always feel like, how do people do that?
So, you know, had a really good friend there in Kansas City that ended up living across the hall from me while I was going to school. And I became good friends with him. He just called me one night, invited me over to Annie's house to watch a movie.
This was all in college?
This is all in college, yeah.
Okay.
And so I was 22 at the time. She was 21. And we met in April of 2006. And we got married in August of 2006.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was really, really fast.
My romantic heart is like,
We both grew up in the LDS church, and the culture in that world is very much get married really fast. So we did. And since then, you know, we had 2 kids together. My daughter is now 13 and son is 10 years old. That was really hard on her. A lot of postpartum depression that she dealt with. And that kind of, dealing with those mental health issues actually led to us leaving our church and kind of never looking back. But that was something that very much bonded her and I together in a way that was really important to us. And it taught me a lot about, losing something and then rebuilding. But it was, it did definitely, we lost our support network. We lost a lot of that world. It really felt like at the time a death that we went through. And then a rebuilding and a reconnection, a reframing of our relationship. We had built our original relationship around that framework, and definitely had to figure out what we meant in the new kind of framework.
That was a huge part of your life, it sounds like.
Yeah. But then she kind of in that process started painting and became an artist and selling her art. And then August 2020, she got sick, and we didn't really know exactly what was going on. It was a weird kind of illness. She was very, very lethargic, spent all day in bed, wasn't really able to function at all. Eating became hard. And then beginning of September, she woke up with yellow eyes, very jaundice. So called a friend of ours who's a doctor, and he ordered some blood work. She went down and he got the results at like 11 p.m. and called us and said, go to the ER. So that began a 3-month whirlwind of, the cancer diagnosis, ended up with pancreatic cancer and trying to do treatments, but then being completely unable to eat. The tumor grew through her duodenum and just like shut everything off and, made it so she couldn't eat, and just got sicker and sicker. And the oncologist the whole time really wanted her, it was a terminal illness, but wanted to maybe buy her a couple of months to be able to get into her studio and paint. But it just never happened. It was like watching a train wreck in slow motion. No real break from the horror of it. And so she died in the middle of December of 2020. So we got 3 months to kind of talk and work through a few issues. I wrote about it recently. Really, we never figured out how to talk to each other in that context. And so there was a lot that was left unsaid. And on top of dealing with all of the scheduling and all of the procedures and all of the trauma that was going on.
The kids.
Yeah. I just pulled them out of school, and we just kind of gritted our teeth and survived.
Yeah. I've been thinking a lot lately about what I'm taking from my marriage and going to be carrying on. So what do you feel like are some of the best things you took from your marriage with Annie?
Probably the biggest thing was learning how to communicate. We got married in our early 20s and really had no idea how to like talk about anything.
Yes.
We didn't have the relationship where we were like fighting all of the time, but it was just like we'd run into issues and just not talk about them.
Yeah.
And it was just like, well, it would take months sometimes for us to be able to be like, hey, this is bothering me, or like, it kind of bothers me when you tell me how to drive, or,
the nuance of marriage.
Yeah, exactly. The nuance of marriage, the nuance of like having kids, and like talking about how to divide household responsibilities, and just all of that. Neither of us had those skills, and so we learned that together. And now at this point, I'm very good at it. Like, it's not...
I was just gonna say, and you're doing that again now which we'll
Yeah.
get to, but I'm like, oh, it must be such a different experience.
It's a very different experience. It feels like I've been able to, with Brooke, not to give away the ending, but or the middle or whatever, but with Brooke and this relationship I have with her feels like it's on like 10x speed compared to
Yeah.
my relationship with Annie, just because I'm not learning how to have simple conversations and
Yeah.
work through minor issues. It's just like, well, here's the issue. Let's talk about it. What do you think? It's so much easier now in this relationship.
I read a post from someone. She said something like, the next person I love will know the me that was never a child. And I thought that
Yeah,
was so fascinating. Did you see that one?
I didn't see it, but that
I was just like, yeah,
exactly.
I'm a whole different me.
Yeah, I mean, I when Annie died, I very much feel like I died.
Mm-hmm.
The version of me that existed with Annie died.
Yeah.
And the last year and a half, part of that process has been like learning who I am
Mm-hmm.
after all of that.
Yeah. That seems like a pretty big commonality
Yeah.
that we all have.
So, Annie died in December. And the week that she died, I started Googling, I'm a widower, just
Mm.
like, what the hell do I do? Sort of like
Yeah.
type Googling. And
Mm.
I've never Googled I'm a widow, so I don't know what would come up there. But
I'll have to try
literally
it.
50% of all of the search results were, so you're dating a widower, from the
Oh,
perspective of the woman who is now dating a widower. I was
interesting.
like, okay, I guess. And then it like sent me down this like rabbit hole of
You're like,
like,
I'm dateable.
I'm dateable and like um
So
I,
weird.
I'm doing this like on my phone at 2 in the morning. Annie
Mm-hmm.
is like, right next to me, barely hanging on to life. And I'm
Mm.
reading these articles about dating widowers.
Yeah. Oh my
um,
gosh.
so it started me thinking about it. And, Annie and I did have the like conversations about dating and remarrying potentially
Mm.
and,
What did she
all of
say about
that.
that?
She very much wanted me to date and find new love. She, in fact, like would not even let me buy a double burial plot,
Hmm.
because in her mind, I was 36 when she died. So, in her mind, she's like, whoever you find, potentially you'll be with them twice as long as you were with me. And
Such a
she's
hard
like, I don't
idea.
want you. Yeah, it was, and wasn't even something I had even thought about. It was totally something that she just presented as
Yeah.
we were talking about and working through all of the like end of life things.
Did she give you conditions? Was she like, nobody with
Nope.
this?
Mm-mm. Nope. She
That sounds very loving.
had no conditions, had no, part of that experience that we went through with leaving our religion
Mm.
was very much a big part of it was working through the idea of ownership in relationships and decoupling from the idea that our marriage meant we, not literally, but like in a lot of ways, owned parts of each other.
Yeah.
And so, in the process of like decoupling and working through that, we had gotten to the point where our marriage was built on the idea that we were individuals who woke up every day and committed to each other every day.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that was we got married when we were 21 and 22. Nobody wants to like be held accountable for every decision
Of
that we make
course.
in our early 20s. And so, we very much rebuilt our relationship around this idea of like, we are committing to each other every day.
Yeah.
For both of us, I think it made it easier for her to say to me, like, rebuild your life with somebody else. And it's been easier for me as I've been moving forward to not feel like, I owe Annie anything or
Yeah.
like I'm betraying anything that I built with her by building something new,
Yeah.
and
That's really nice that you had the foresight to have the conversation and
yeah,
that it gives you some peace.
yeah. So, by February was feeling like, not that I felt ready to start dating, but I got to the point where the thought I had was, this is always going to be hard. I
Yeah.
could wait 10 years and start dating 10 years from now, and it's going to be hard to work
Hmm.
through these issues. So it was like a Saturday night. It was actually a week after Valentine's Day, and then the
Mm.
2 month anniversary of her death was the next day, and then my birthday was the day after that.
Oh
And
gosh.
it was hell. Like, it was really, really bad. And so
Hmm.
got to the next week and was just like, you know what? Maybe there's somebody out there that can handle this. And, I'm going to be as open and as honest and just like put myself out there. And my
Yeah.
thought was, it's always going to be hard, and nothing is going to be as hard as that, 4 months of her being sick and dying.
Yeah.
And if I'm going to be sad and miserable, and if the next year of my life is going to be hard, that's true no matter what. I
Yeah.
might as well see if there's someone out there that is willing to like hang out with me.
Yeah.
And we'll see how it goes. So I
Yeah.
signed up for Bumble. I think I also signed up for Hinge. I had no idea what I was doing.
Of
Like, I
course.
didn't, like, it had been 15 years,
Oh
and
my gosh.
I didn't even have a smartphone when smartphones didn't even exist. Like,
Yeah, but, like the flip phone was the rage.
yeah, yeah. It was
Or the
the,
razor
like,
slide.
I was paying per text, and
Mhm. That makes
just,
us sound super old. We're actually not that old, just to clarify.
yes, that is true. Also, it just means that smartphones really are not that old. Like, that
Okay,
is,
so that is a great way to reframe it, Simon.
yeah, exactly. Anyway, so I was just like, fuck it, let's do it. Signed up, matched with Brooke within like 12 hours.
Oh my goodness. You're a fast mover.
Yeah. Yes, we matched quickly. We started chatting. We had done a couple of like virtual dates,
Hmm.
and we had set our first date for, just like a Friday night, go out to dinner sort of thing.
Can I ask you about the virtual date thing?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Did you do that because of logistics with your kids, or you just felt like I want to get a sense before I actually go out? Or
Um, yes, all of the above.
okay.
It made it easier to get to know her.
Hmm.
Also, she's divorced and has two kids. I have two kids, and no one else to watch them regularly.
And it was a pandemic.
And it was a pandemic, and I had no idea what the hell I was doing, and
Perfect.
it just kind of happened that way.
Yeah.
But we set up an in-person date, woke up the morning of, and my son just was having a really, really bad grief day.
Hmm.
Um, and at this point, I hadn't put widower in my bio. I don't even know if it was an option.
At least I know on Hinge you have to like choose to write it.
We hadn't talked about it. I put that I had kids. I knew that she had
Hmm.
kids, but we hadn't talked about background or anything much at that point. But my son woke up having a really, really bad day, and it just wasn't going to work.
Yeah.
So I just messaged Brooke and was just like, so real talk,
Hmm. Hmm.
here's what my life is,
Hmm.
and it's not going to work. And it came back to my kind of condition that I had set for myself of just like, I'm going to be honest. I'm going to just
Hmm.
like show up fully in whatever happens.
Yeah.
However, whoever I'm talking to handles that, it's not going to be worse than watching Annie die. And
Hmm.
so, whatever. If they can't handle it, oh well.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
It's just like nothing's going to compare to that. And
Yeah. So I crafted this thing where I was just like, here's what's going on, here's my life, and here's what's happening with my son, and it's not going to work out. I still want to, like, let's reschedule.
yeah.
Brooke's response was really wonderful and really kind and empathetic and understanding in a way that I was like, okay, I can trust her with what's going on. I can trust
Yeah.
her with my emotions and all of that. And so rescheduled for the week later and dropped my kids off at Annie's parents' house and picked her up and went
Yeah.
out on a date, and it went really, really well. So it's been 14 months.
Okay. A little over a year.
Since that first, match on Bumble, and about 13 months since our first in-person date. And it's gone really well. It's been interesting. I mean, to put the full cart in front of the house or in front of the horse, her and her kids are moving in at the end of May.
Yeah.
Things are going really, really well.
So
Right
happy
now
for you.
dealing with contractors to build a room in the basement of my house so our two sons can share a room down there. And
So this is the same, you're in the same house that you shared with Annie, correct?
yes, yeah, it's the
Okay.
same house I'd lived in with Annie.
Did you have any reservations about that?
Yes and no. It was more about, could I still live in the house that Annie and I shared,
Yeah,
independent
exactly.
of anything that happened with Brooke or in my dating experience. I spent a lot of time trying to figure out, like, can I live here?
Yeah.
Can I exist in this same space where I have all of these memories with Annie? I came to the answer for that of yes, like I can do that. And that was a much harder question than, like, once I answered that,
Yeah.
could I live here and build a life with Brooke?
And do you feel like that decision, because this is just full transparency, this is something I grapple with all the time. Like,
yeah,
it's like some days I'm just like, it feels so good to live here because this is the house we shared and all of our memories and our life was here. And some days I'm
yeah,
like, I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to move forward if I stay here.
yeah.
So for me, I feel like I'm constantly putting it through this filter of, what about my kids? So how did your kids play into that?
The funny story about that is, like, a year before Annie got sick, Annie was a little bit of a hypochondriac. She thought a lot about her own death and my death.
Oh, interesting.
It's like the cruelest irony in the world that someone like Annie got, like, a very, like, devastating cancer diagnosis because
Yeah.
she, like, worried about it all the time. Like, half of my Marco Polos from Annie include something like her noticing something on her skin and being like, oh, I
Oh my
wonder if that's
goodness.
cancer.
Wow.
So for something to end up being cancer for her was beyond cruel, ironic, whatever.
Yeah.
But so a year before she got sick, she actually, like, I got home one day from work and she was like, if I died, what would you do?
Oh my
And
goodness.
my like gut response was, because I at the time I was commuting about 50 minutes north of where I live, and my gut response was, well, I'd sell the house and move up, be close to work. That
Yeah.
just seems like it would be way more convenient. And
Yeah.
she's like, no, you can't do that. She's like, you can't move. That would be, she's like, think about it. Our kids just lost their mom. Don't take their home
Wow.
away from them too.
Wow.
Um, at the very least, after she died, I was like, okay, I'm giving it a year. I'll see
Yeah.
how it feels after a year. I'm not gonna move within the first year.
Yeah.
In that year, though, I thought through that, and it is true that my kids' friends are here. Their life is here
Yep.
in a lot of ways, and everybody's different. Every situation's different, but for my
Of course.
kids, it felt right to let them stay where they are for now.
Yeah.
Who knows down the road with jobs and everything? We'll see.
Can I back up a little and ask,
Uh-huh.
how did these conversations go with you and Brooke about moving in? Because it's like a kind of a huge deal.
You know,
Or maybe it's not.
I mean, it is a huge deal, but, like, something changed in me with when Annie died, to where I felt and still feel very strongly that I am not going to let fear or uncertainty get in the way of me living a life that is fulfilling and has love in it and human connection in it.
Yeah.
So the conversations came up organically. And part of that is Brooke. She's also not afraid of having those conversations. She's also not somebody who has a thought and keeps it in her head, to herself.
I know nothing about people like that. I'm just kidding. That's like totally me. I can't keep anything in my brain.
Where I like before Annie got sick, I'd have thoughts and I'd be like, I can't share this until I've thought through every contingency. And now it's just like, no, I'll have the conversation out loud and work through it out loud. So a lot of this stuff just came up organically. I came to a lot of crossroads, and I think we kind of chatted about this on Instagram a little bit, where I came to a lot of places in our relationship where it was either I don't want to wait to like move it forward.
Yeah.
I'm not in a place where I was interested or am interested in having a relationship that is just dating without any sort of future or conversation about the future.
Yeah.
So, a lot of it was like, okay, well, what is the next step? For me, it was always, what is the next step? Not like, what are 8 steps down the road?
Yeah, of course.
It was just like, okay, well, next step at some point was like, let's take a trip together and see how that goes.
With the kids or just the two of you?
Just the two of us to start.
Okay. Where'd you go?
We went to Chicago, and
yes, that's right.
we spent the weekend there. 4 days in Chicago, went to a Cubs game. We went to some restaurants. We went on the river tour. We went, we just kind of hung out and spent the weekend there. And at this point, I had told my closest friends about Brooke. And this was in September. So we had been dating for a while, but I hadn't really told very many people. Kind of wanted to keep that to myself and just kind of see what mine and her connection was
outside of the chorus of everybody else.
Yeah. And like potential judgment and potential awkwardness and weirdness. And told my kids before we went to Chicago that I was dating someone, and that went well. And so we got home from Chicago and I was like, okay, what's the next step?
When you told your kids, did they ask you questions about it, or were they pretty much just like, okay?
My oldest was just like, all right, sounds good. She was totally fine and on board with it.
And how old is she?
She's 13.
Okay.
And then my youngest, who's 10, he had a few more questions. He was like, okay, well, what does that mean? The one thing my daughter did say is, oh, so every time you've told us that you were going to hang out with a friend, but wouldn't tell us who the friend was that her? I was like,
that's
yeah.
So yep. That was what my daughter was like too. She was like, oh, is that what you're doing when you don't work on that one day a week? And I was like, sometimes.
Yeah. You caught me. My son, though, had a lot more questions. He was a lot more concerned about what that meant. And we had a lot of conversations about how, love works and how it's possible to love his mom, to love Annie, and to remember her, and also to have this other relationship. And that, doing something new and finding someone new doesn't take away from anything. And it never means that his mom has been replaced.
Yeah.
For probably the first 2 or 3 months, we talked through what he was feeling about once a week.
It's really good that he's able to do that.
Yeah, his ability to communicate about his feelings has just blown me away. It's really, really impressive.
This is so interesting because my son is also like that. And one morning he was just like, I know when I'm having a hard day, I can feel it everywhere inside of my body. And I was just like, you're 7. Like the
Yeah.
fact that you can say that is so amazing.
And that took me until I was 25 to be able to do.
Seriously,
Like,
maybe older.
definitely older.
Okay, so you had the great weekend. You told the kids.
Told the kids, and so, the next step was to introduce them to Brooke.
Yeah.
So she came down, and Brooke and I had had some sleepovers without the kids, so we kind of knew how that went between the two of us, and we were just like, all right, well, we're gonna introduce her to the kids. And so she came down after work one Friday, and we had planned a big dinner, and I talked to them a bunch, and was very clear. To step back a little bit, Brooke and I kind of talked through, okay, like, what is your expectation of this, and what is my expectation of this experience, and what do you
That's so mature.
we talked through, like, what should the sleeping arrangements be. Would it be weird for my kids, for her to sleep in the same bed that me and Annie slept in? So we talked through all of that and kind of came to the consensus that, like, her and I would do what we were going to do that evening, and we would invite my kids to participate in all of it, but then let them decide kind of what they were comfortable with. Let them drive the interactions between them and Brooke. It ended up, it was a nice enough night. We ordered pizza, we ate outside, and had that conversation with my kids before she got there of, like, here's what me and Brooke will be doing. Come with us if you want. If you don't feel comfortable doing that, where the switch is, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And so she got there, we had the pizza, we sat outside and we're eating, and both of them just kind of came outside and just kind of sat down next to us. And within 15 minutes, I was kind of the, like, fourth wheel of this experience of, like, Brooke and my kids just, like, sitting there, all of them talking, and me just kind of watching and seeing how it went. And that lasted for about an hour.
Did you guys make the conscious decision to introduce her to your kids without her kids present?
I do think that was a conscious decision. Part of it is she had been divorced for 4 or 5 years at this point. Her kids really didn't know much different than, their mom being divorced.
Yeah.
Where it was all kind of new to my kids.
Yeah.
So the feeling was it was going to be harder for my kids potentially than it would be for her kids.
Okay. We ended up having that situation too, where my boyfriend met the kids without his kids present. And after the fact, it's a big, long story, but it just kind of happened that way. And after the fact, we both said we couldn't have planned it any better, because then the kids aren't focused on each other and they get to really just connect with the other person. And I just, like, one of those things I would say, I think that's the way to go.
Yeah. What I have tried through all of it to do is to change one thing at a time for my kids.
Exactly. Me too.
And introduce one variable instead of all at once.
Yeah.
Again, it went really well. It was weird for my son for a little bit. My daughter kind of loved her immediately, like, just as a 13-year-old girl, and just kind of was craving, I think, that sort of relationship and that sort of
a woman.
Yeah. And so, she just took to it immediately, where my son, it took a little bit longer, jumping ahead a little bit, when has become more like, okay, well, Brooke is an adult in the home, that when she asks you to do something, like, you need to do it. That was probably the hardest adjustment for him, to kind of see her as an authority figure in his life. That is something we've talked through kind of quite a bit.
Sure. Yeah, that feels tricky. And how do the kids get along with each other?
Really well.
That's a blessing.
It is. I mean, it's a little bizarre how well they get along.
That's
Um,
great.
her oldest is a boy and her youngest is a girl. So it's 13, 10, and then 9 and 7.
Okay.
So, I mean, honestly, if, we go out and, it just looks like a normal family.
Yeah.
Based on the ages. There was a little bit of an adjustment where the two middle kids kind of changed roles in the family, where, my youngest is now the second oldest and has two little siblings, and her oldest is now second youngest and has two older siblings. That is kind of a dynamic that was a little difficult to manage and deal with. But I mean, honestly, we just have made it very clear for all of them right from the beginning that both me and Brooke can be talked to about anything. Brooke asked my kids about Annie. She is very conscious of making sure and keeping her memory alive and keeping her a part of our family. When my youngest has a grief day, has a day where he's sad, that is never something that she makes him feel bad for. And
so important.
And I've told Brooke this multiple times, like if before I started dating, could have made like here's the line in the sand, things that I cannot accept in a relationship. That would have been my number one thing.
Yeah.
I feel fully capable in my heart to be able to open up and build a new life with someone.
Yeah.
But I can't, that first love, between me and Annie is always going to exist.
Of course.
And she will always be my kid's mom. And I need space in whatever relationship for that to exist and for that to be maintained and real. It works because Brooke is able to do that and navigate that. And
that's such a gift.
From the very beginning of me canceling our first date, it's just worked. And it's been interesting, starting to date so early in the grieving process, because she was there and witnessed so much of it.
Yeah.
And has been willing to, sit with me while I cry, or sit with me while I frantically write my Instagram posts. And
when you marry so young, I was just talking to my parents about this today. When you marry so young, you grow up with your spouse, right? You grow in so many things together. You're just like children, and then you grow up together and figure it out. And it sounds like you and Brooke will have a similar yet very different experience where you're going through together the grieving of Annie, and she's there, she's seeing it. It's so real for her too. And that feels really, really beautiful in its own way.
Yeah, it is. It's like a growing up in a new life together.
Well, I'm so happy for you that this is working out.
Thanks.
And also I think, especially because our stories are synchronous in so many ways, that I feel like I'm so fortunate to be able to watch you do it first. Or message you on Instagram and be like, what did you do about this?
Because so much of that, I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing.
But you're handling it all so well.
The thing I keep coming back to is honestly, I did something with, taking care of Annie and dealing with her death and dealing with my grief and my kids' grief, that I just feel unafraid. I've had the thought experiments many times over the last year plus of okay, let's say this thing with Brooke ends, it falls apart for whatever reason. It's not going to be worse. It's not going to be harder than that. Not that I
anticipate that.
Obviously I do not want it to end, or want to go through anything painful again.
Yeah.
It's just like I have been able to figure out so much already in my life. And I just feel like I'm not going to let any of that fear get in the way of something potentially being really, really good and wonderful.
I think that's really admirable. And I expect that it's something a lot of people are going to need to hear.
Oh, hopefully.
I mean, really, like, so easy to get caught up, even though, like, the veil has been lifted a little bit on life and death and grief and all of that. There's still worries, right? And sometimes you just forge through that, and you're doing it. And
so it was this last week. I spent the night over at Brooke's and woke up at 2 a.m, panicked. Just like my heart was racing. Just there weren't even any words associated with it. I was just like in full blown fight or flight, like panic mode.
Yeah.
And it came from like, okay, there's this thing that I am building, and what if I lose it again, and what if Brooke gets sick, and what if I get sick, or what if one of our kids gets sick? It's there. Like you said, it's like the veil has been lifted. I have no misconception that at some point this is ending one way or another. Me and Brooke's time together is finite. I know that will happen at some point one way or another. I have learned with my grief how to just like sit with that feeling and say, like, is this transitory? Is this something that is indicative of like a real flaw or a real concern that I need to have? Or is this something that is momentary? Is this something that I can sit with and let go of and move through? The choice then to me feels like, do I allow it to exist and then let it go, or do I sit with it and let it potentially get in front of or get in the way of something bigger, get in the way of a love that's developing?
Is there an app for that? I could really use that.
Yeah.
Like, is this real or not? Help.
Yeah. Like Google, but for
Oh my goodness. Okay, we're running out of time, so we have to do quick questions. All right, here we go. So, online dating? Okay, yes, you told us.
I did the Bumble.
You did not put your widow status on your profile. That's what you said.
No.
Okay. Do you see yourself getting married again someday?
Yes.
Okay.
Eventually.
Do you think you would have kids again? Did gender experimentation ever come into play for you?
It did not. No.
Did you feel the widow's fire? So then
yes.
the follow-up question is self-gratification.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. I don't even know if this question applies to you, but the whole like, would you have your friends set you up thing? Let's say worst case scenario, this doesn't work out.
I mean, if I were ever forced into that situation again, yes, I would let friends set me up.
Did you skip anybody named Annie when you were looking at dating profiles?
I don't think I was on the apps long enough to have encountered that.
You mean 12 hours
situation?
Wasn't enough?
Yeah, it was. I didn't come across. I think I would have skipped it at that point. Now, honestly, I probably would skip it now too.
Have you ever accidentally called Brooke Annie?
I have not, but it has come close.
Okay.
I have caught it in my mind a few times before it happened.
I feel you. Okay. The song recommendation for our building Spotify playlist.
Oh, yes.
Okay. Tell us what song you picked and why.
So there is an album by Cloud Cult.
Okay.
The album is The Seeker.
Okay.
The main guy of Cloud Cult lost a child and so has dealt with a lot of grief. And The Seeker, I don't think it's necessarily written specifically about that experience, but you can tell it is an album that is written by somebody who has experienced that intense grief.
Okay, but I can't that intense grief. Okay, but I can't add the whole album to the playlist.
If I had to pick a song, which you're making me.
I'm forcing you.
Yeah, I would pick The Great Unknown.
Awesome. Can't wait to listen. All right, so all of you with grief playlists out there, this can be added.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Final question, what's one thing you're really looking forward to?
At this point, I am looking forward to, and probably it's the thing I miss most about my relationship with Annie, was just the like comfortable, contented silence of a relationship, where like Brooke and I have experienced that, but just the like in a shared home, in a shared space that is just like built by two people who love each other, and that experience of just like both of you feeling at home in that space and completely comfortable, to where you don't have to talk and yet you still feel connected and you still kind of know what's going on in the other person's brain, and that level of connection and love, that's what I look forward to the most. That and sharing food, those two things.
All right, Simon, this was so great. Thank you so much for your time.
I loved it. Thank you. Bye.
Bye. I think one of my favorite parts of this interview was when Simon talked about how he wasn't going to allow fear to dictate his decisions in his life after losing Annie. I know I hold a lot of fear about the future and potential loss again, and I just really appreciate his approach and the way he sort of dove into this, knowing that he loved companionship and that was important for him, and then sort of making it happen. I wish the very best to Simon and Brooke as they merge their families and figure out this new journey together. I guess at the end of the podcast, I'm also supposed to say something like, this podcast is written, edited, and produced by me. And there's special music by my very good friend and school music teacher, Jamie Guerra. This has been Dating After Death. We'll see you next time.